if I go ahead and click live chat?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Yeah,
Jay, can you?
What's up?
And Jason, you can tell me if I'm wrong because obviously you're here monitoring too. But Jay seems really hot, and everybody else seems really fine on volume.
Yeah, he does need to turn it down a little.
Just a tad.
Let me back up.
Or that. You have options. Your choices are to not talking to the mic like this, or just like just. Chill out.
I
Or
say we
turn the
all
gain
talk
down
into
a
the
little.
mic like that. We all just
yeah.
distort our microphones the entire broadcast.
Here's the sad thing. My gain is actually all the way off right
We'll
now.
lose-
Like if I turn my gain up, that would be like
Oh
that.
my
But,
god!
Wow.
yeah.
Oh,
So I'm just gonna back away from my microphone.
No, we got to do that thing that kids do whenever they're doing karaoke, where they get on the mic and they're like,
Yeah. Let's all just go hot.
Ow!
Ow. Okay.
face boost all of it.
Yo, talk
Guys are
about
upsetting my dog.
All right, I'm
Just
gonna
the
hit
face
mute.
boost.
Do you want me to chime in every so often about what's going on in the chat, or do you just
I
want
Sure.
do.
Sure.
If you
Okay.
feel the need or want to, you're more than welcome to do so.
Okay, I'm hitting mute. It's all yours.
Okay. Welcome to Inspirations Beyond Disabilities for what is today? It is August 6th, 2021, and we will come out on the following Monday. I'm Dave Moore. I suffer from cortical blindness, and we've been asked to describe ourselves by our audience, and so I'm a bald dad bod version of Ed Sheeran, and joining me, of course, is the baritone blurt himself, Jay. How's it going, Jay?
What's going on? What's going on, y'all? For or a description of myself, I look like The Rock if you really just let himself go.
I really like this as a method of like introducing the show. Like I think we might start doing it elsewhere as well. Joining me also is Ezrick, the blind in NY with a bunch of underscores. Ezrick, what's going on, man?
Yay, he's finally getting it. He's finally getting it. I gotta send him some snacks just for doing it.
It's just because I didn't follow you before this podcast. It's entirely
Wow.
I'm just gonna be honest. I mean, every time I saw this guy, he's like, "Hey, I'm getting high." I'm pretty much like, "Okay, bye."
What? That's not all I do.
Terrible.
Okay.
Just
Terrible.
Just throwing shade. Relax, Ezra.
It's all right. It's all right. I own it.
And
It's okay.
every time I see like Q&A with Jay, I'm like, all right, time to watch. And then joining us for her second appearance on this show, and
First time as a host.
somebody whose TikTok I can't scroll past because it just fascinates me. Kai is fly. What's going on, Kai?
Hey, what's going on? Description. I look like a mixture of Ugly Betty and the girl who says Amanda, please.
Wow. This podcast, we all really have high self-confidence. I can tell you that right now.
I think it'll
Oh, I
actually
have great self-confidence.
I love how I skipped my description. We're just gonna leave that alone. We're gonna leave that alone. Okay.
I handled it for you, Ezra. It's just the guy that's, Actually, what's with the shades? What's going on with the shades? Shades are cool. I'm digging it.
I couldn't find my glasses, so yeah, we're just gonna go with the shades today. I don't know where the hell I set them down, so yeah.
So everybody, I had an experience at Target this week. I was walking through the aisle, no big deal. Nothing wild, nothing too crazy. And my girlfriend goes, "Oh my God, watch out for that." And I go, "Oh." And as she's saying that, I have walked straight into these metal pots that are at they're metal pot holders, like they would hold, like pots that would sit outside. And they're just like lining the edge of this aisle, but they're out of my peripheral vision because I can't see down at all. So I walked straight into these, and then I've now bruised my foot, and that was my experience of the week.
Oh my God.
Accidental blind moments brought to you by Dave Moore.
And every time there's a wet floor sign, I walk straight into it. We all know this, but these were round, circular metal things with holes in them, so you don't only trip through them. You don't only just trip into them. It's great. It was fantastic.
Listen, I kick those stupid wet floor signs every time. It doesn't matter where they strategically place them. Before I leave an aisle, it has been punt kicked 35 yards. I am going out for football. because I'm pretty sure that I can still kick something pretty far off. So yeah, all the time, all the
It's
time.
as somebody who does maintenance work for a living, right? I get to place wet floor signs quite often. It's a thing I do frequently. And I always think like, where can I place this where somebody won't walk into it, but it will also still be seen? And even without, even though that I placed it, even though I
I
purposely
knew
put
he
it,
was gonna say this.
I put it out of the way intentionally. Somehow, I still end up smacking into it the next day.
Because your body
'Cause
is drawn to kicking it.
I-
You're a blind person. Your body says something feels off. I have not
Okay.
kicked something today.
As
Where
a
is the
blind
sign?
person, shoulder checking, right? I can't be the only one who does that because that's what my body
Oh my
says.
God.
It
Shoulder
says the
check?
right side of you does not exist. So every corner you walk
Oh!
around, you got to shoulder check the
Yup.
shit out
Oh,
of
I
it.
do that in my house.
And you got to do the
like,
thing
all
where
the
you're like
time.
aggressive, like you shoulder check it and then you go, "What, bitch?"
Yes.
Like, just
You got to look back at it like
You
it
gotta
just did something
commit.
to you.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I
yes.
have a question for Kai. Are you monocular? Like one eye?
Kind of. Like this one is shit, but it still somewhat works a little bit, but not good enough to not shoulder check things.
Okay, so I have only one eye, and I do that to the max. I legitimately will body anything on my right side, and people look at me like, "Why did you just walk into that door frame like that?" I was like,
'Cause it
"Bro,
looked at me
honestly,
funny.
Because
son.
that door frame was being a bitch.
Like,
What you
I found my
mean?
glasses, by the way. Yay!"
I'm
Continue.
gonna leave that alone.
And it's just gonna leave it. Jay, I agree. Just let them have their moment.
Okay,
Kai-
let me butt out.
All right, and only because Kai was on this episode on the show only once. And a lot of us have been here the last few episodes and have explained our blindness in amounts. If you're not familiar with this podcast, we talk about what it means to be blind as well as disabled in any way, and what it means to be like in real life with those things. Shai, you want to, or Kai? I'm sorry, Kai.
Wow.
Yeah, that's gonna take some getting used to, ain't it?
It's so close. It is so close that I'm sure I will do it forever, and I'm sorry. Kai, would you like to explain your vision? And I know this is like the worst thing, but we all get asked this constantly, and I keep thinking of trying to explain it better. But can you explain it to our audience just a little bit?
Sure. Wow, that gave me PTSD. Let's all sit around this circle and explain our eye conditions. God, that was the worst day. Okay, so I have I have optic nerve hypoplasia. Please don't ask me a bunch of questions about it because I do not know. I have not looked it up. But essentially what I do know about it in my case is that my left eye works relatively well. My right eye is absolute shit. And I have perfect pitch, so that kind of makes up for it. I'm a gangster. I'm a pimp.
Hey.
You know what's crazy? I think almost everybody I've talked to at one point or another, especially when they found out their condition, just went, and I don't want to know any more about it besides the name of it. So I could just tell people what it is, and I can tell people what I see, and that's it.
Yeah,
Like,
I
not
feel
many
like that's
people
all that
really
matters.
want to research into like exactly what all goes into it, because I think a lot of times, and this can kind of transition into something else, but I think a lot of times the more you find out about it, or at least what they say like the end result's going to be, the more like depressing it kind of is sometimes. And you just want to go, you know what? I don't need to know. I have
Right.
it. Thank you. That's all I need to
That's
know.
where I'm
Thank
at.
you. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
It is so funny you say that. So like my last doctor's appointment, I've been having like weird tenseness in my bad eye.
Mhm.
So I asked the eye doctor, like, what is that? He, takes a peek in my eye. He goes, it's really nothing. It's just like a buildup of calcium. It's called band keratopathy, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, so like, what do I do about it? Oh, you just deal with it. I'm like, oh, okay.
Just deal.
Don't you like
Define.
don't you like the just deal with it?
No, he gave me drops, but he was like, it's really nothing. You can't do anything about it. Just, take the drops. It should help. If it does come back, lubrication drops and you'll be fine.
I mean, this is maybe part of everyone who's sitting on this panel's condition is there is nothing that can be done.
do
I had
about it.
I had a seizure when I was very, very little. That killed a section of my brain, therefore causing me to have, thankfully, a very minor lack of, very tiny, insignificant amount of loss of motor function and a and blindness in my left eye, particularly, right?
Mm.
And so, as much as that is, there is nothing that can be done. So the reality is, we can sit here and talk all day and ask me questions like, Dave, what can you see? Dave, what's the, but it doesn't change it. It doesn't fix it. And no matter what, at the end of the day, there's nothing that can be done to change it.
Could I get you to say that one more time, but like bass boost the shit out of it? So next time someone asks me if I've tried stronger glasses or if I've tried contacts or if I've looked into certain, I just want to play a bass boosted, heavily distorted clip of you saying, everyone on this panel, nothing can be done.
Right.
Please stop.
But I think so. Then the question is, do you ever feel like it's almost pointless to go to an ophthalmologist, like to go to the doctor? Like,
Well,
I know it's important to go because sometimes advances happen, but those advances sometimes seem so few and far between that it feels like your doctor appointment is, okay, now let me just put some drops in your eyes. Okay, now you can see even worse than you could before, and there's still nothing we can do about it.
Yep.
I mean, I distinctly, the last time I went to the eye doctor, my actual neuro ophthalmologist, she's a specialist, it's for brain eye conditions. The last time I went, she specifically asked me, "Why are you here?" And I remember saying, "I don't know." Like, because I'm supposed to be here. And the truth was, I'm going to not be on my mom's insurance anymore. And this may be the last time I ever get to see you ever. Right? Which is really what I got to tell her. But like, I'm not here for any particular reason. I'm here to make sure that everything is still stable the way we know it is.
I
and
think
that's it.
I think that's one of the worst questions a doctor can ask you. Like, you're coming in for like, okay, well, is there anything else you guys have found out in the last year? Is there anything else you guys can do? Is there any advancements in technology that may be beneficial? I hate that. So why are you here? Because
the last time I went, I had to get some tests run for the wonderful Social Security Administration, which we will not get into and talk about. But I literally didn't even see my doctor because even though I had an appointment to see her, I had a thing. It's like, Dave, I need you to come in early for these tests. And I'm like, that's fine. I'll come in. I'll get the test done. And they're like, and then we'll see you like a week later. And then they're like, do you want to come back in a week? Like, I'm like, no, like we got the tests, we got the results, nothing. There's no point in me talking to you.
Yeah.
Right. Like, cause all you're going to do is be like, so why are you here?
Yeah.
Like, let's dilate your eyes so you cannot see for 4 days. Like, forget it. That's cool. But we ran the tests. We're good. We got the results I wanted. Right. But that was the only purpose in it.
Yeah.
We're in this. Go ahead, Jay.
No, go ahead.
We're in this perpetual cycle of, can it be fixed? Can anything be done? I've been given stronger glasses. They made me sick. I tried them for months. Don't tell me. Don't write in the comments. Don't say anything like, did you really try it? Like, yes, I tried it. It made me sick. Did it help me see any better? Maybe. Insignificantly better. Maybe like a little bit. Right. I don't know what this does to people, and this is where we're probably going with this. And I'm hoping that everybody on this panel is willing to be vulnerable and emotional on this podcast. Be set, Kai. You're here for silliness. That's not to stress you out.
Hell yeah, designated silliness. I love it.
But Jay put in our wonderful group chat maybe a week ago a video of somebody talking about how there are studies going on now talking about mental illness within disabled communities, especially the visually impaired. And it's in such early stages, these studies and things, that there's not tons of research or numbers to back a lot of it up. Like we could sit here all day and say, this study was done, but there's not a ton going and it's still moving forward. But they're seeing overall what's being noticed is that within the visually impaired and blind community, there is a significant increase in depression and like anxiety overall.
Yeah. And if you think about it, like the reason why I started leaning toward that way is, remember when we were talking about sensory overload and all of the things that you experience with sensory overload, right? We talked about that example of being in a restaurant where it's dark, it's crowded, it's extremely noisy, it's compact to like chair to chair, and you can't move. And the things that you're experiencing, like you're anxious to move or get up because the second you get up, you might slam into somebody else's chair or slam into a waiter or a waitress that's carrying a tray of like glasses or a tray of food or whatever. And then all of these other like things that you can experience in like loud and crowded and noisy areas, like that sensory overload. Two of the main symptoms of sensory overload were anxiety and depression. And it's kind of like when you think about the fact that individuals who are in the VIP community experience anxiety and depression, can you put two and two together? Like, is one caused by the other? Like, is the sensory overload, or is it other things? Like yesterday, was it yesterday? I can't remember because my days all run together now. But yesterday I put in on my TikTok the story about me almost dying because I accidentally got into somebody, or was trying to get into somebody else's car thinking it was my ride, right? And having a gun pulled on you, like a lot of the experiences that you can have just being a VIP, right? Those things are traumatizing, right? It can cause, because for a long time for me with that experience, I experienced what's called intrusive thoughts. So like it's basically that thought of like the person screaming as I was trying to get into the car, the thought of the person having the gun on me and hearing my friend laugh in the distance while I was going through this moment. Like the thought of, remember when I told you guys about when I was trying to get home that one night and I walked onto the highway, the thought of cars just zipping by you as you're walking onto an on-ramp, like those things are traumatizing, right? We experience a lot of trauma just from our day-to-day experience. Heck, for those of us that are dealing with sight loss, continued sight loss, every time you wake up and your sight has changed, that's a new level of trauma, because now you have to say you had plans on doing something with the level of vision that you had, and now you can no longer do that, right? You have to now, what they call, mourn what you used to be able to do, right? Those are things that we in the VIP community experience a lot, but we don't really either talk about or really seek help about, because again, it's there's a lot to it. Like I remember, Ezrick, you were talking about being able to even get healthcare to be able to even seek help.
Definitely. One thing I wanted to like piggyback on was you were talking about how sensory overload is like, you know, a big factor into it. One thing is, I feel like sensory overload, when you're in that moment of it, you're facing anxiety, right? You're
Right.
just anxious and you want to get out of it, right?
Yeah.
When people, you know, you have to like refrain from doing stuff because you know what you're about to face causes that sensory overload. Like, okay, these friends want to go out with you to this brand new trendy restaurant that's super crowded and super loud, and it's just not the environment that you're a fan of, right? Because
Right.
you know what it'll do to you. So these people would just, I guess you won't come. All right, fine. You know, like making you feel less than because you can't come, and now you have this moment of, damn, like, fuck, I'm the stick in the mud.
No,
And
yeah,
I think somebody was talking about this in the podcast that you guys did without me.
Shade.
I'm not throwing shade. I'm glad you guys continued.
you get put in a position where either way, either you're the guy who was not fun and didn't want to go, so now you're sad and depressed because now your friends think you're a loser and you've been left out, or you get put in a position where you've now gone and felt uncomfortable for extended periods of time. And so basically the result is, at the end of that night, no matter which one you picked, you're not in a very good mood. And there's not much you can do about it, right? A lot of people constantly to me, and because I'm not a very happy person all the time, constantly tell me that I need to be more positive, put more positive energy into the world. And yet, like every 5 seconds, something has to be shitty. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't know, when I was younger and I had a more optimistic view of the world, I think I didn't feel this way, but I think a constant struggle battle of one being almost 30 and not having health insurance, because that's really where we're at right now, having to deal with adulthood is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, disabled or not. And then you add the weighted pressure of all these things, and you wonder why a large group of people who are suffering in lots of ways are more depressed. It doesn't seem like this should have been a wild, shocking revelation in 2021. It also
fucking swear to God. I swear to God. Oh my God. Sorry.
Go ahead, Kai.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I was like, I'm a wait. But then I was like, anyway, I did want to piggyback off of that and kind of ask the able-bodied community why we as disabled people are expected to be the overly positive, motivational speaker, inspiration porn kind of thing, and why people are just now realizing that sometimes we fucking sad.
Because I can answer that for you.
I can answer that question for you right
now. Whenever you watch television, and again, this is always my frame of reference, because when you look at the world and you look at how the world learns things or what their understanding of things are, it's always because of what's portrayed in media. And in media, we are the put the best face on it type of people. At least that's how we're portrayed. Everything is sunglasses and roses and flowers, and we are here to stand and inspire, despite the fact that we could be going through the worst possible moments of our lives. Forget about the fact that we're disabled. We're also, a lot of us, and this is where Jason always talks about intersectionality, a lot of us are part of other categories that can't put the best face on things, right? So a lot of us are in impoverished conditions. A lot of us are part of other communities, whether it's ethnically, sexually, religiously, whatever, that are also oppressed in this nation. And a lot of us experience all of those things on top of being disabled. So some days you just don't have the put on a happy face demeanor that you can just go, well, everything will be all right. Many days you probably don't have that, because if you're not dealing with the problems of disability that day, maybe you're dealing with the problems of being a minority that day. Maybe you're dealing with the problems of sexual identity that day. Maybe you're dealing with the problems of just being a human being, having to work a job that doesn't pay enough to actually provide a livable lifestyle that
Take
day,
it to the
right?
chorus.
So you have, sometimes you're dealing with all of it in the same day. Like some days you wake up and it's just like a committee of, from 10 to 12, you're going to be dealing with the fact that you keep walking into things. From 12:30 to about 2 o'clock, you're going to deal with the fact that everyone keeps calling you the N-word everywhere you go. From about 2:30 to about 5 p.m., you're going to realize you don't have enough to eat and get home. Otherwise, you're going to be broke, begging on the street. And from about 5:30 to about 8 o'clock, you're going to be constantly reminded that this country hates you. So that's going to be your day today. Have fun, right? And many people don't get that all of that can kind of run one after the other, or even at the same time.
Not so much of have fun, have a good day. It's make sure you stay positive.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the other reason, and this is not to, I hesitate to even bring this subject matter up, yet at the same time as I feel as it needs to be said. The reason that this community has been put in a position where we're meant to be positive and be motivational speakers is because of the media and motivational speakers. I hate saying this, right? But let's talk about the 3 times in my entire public school education system that disability was acknowledged as a thing and taught.
Oh God.
There were motivational speakers who came in who had overcome every challenge that has ever been passed at them, right? And the reality is, I'm sure that those people's lives were challenging in lots of ways, right? I'm sure that guy who had no arms and legs but could somehow like hop around on his wheelchair and like get up on the he's the coolest guy ever, and he came in like multiple times and gave speeches about how he's overcome lots of things, and he's a great guy, right? I'm sure his challenges have happened, but his portrayal and his story is that you can overcome anything, that everybody is capable of dealing with it, everybody should be positive. And the reality is that guy is giving that speech and he's making a very good point. But if he's the example we set for the disabled community, the reality is he's their example and he's got it figured out. And the reality is, I think most people, and I think this is becoming more and more apparent as we all swipe through our For You pages on TikTok, is that no matter how old you are, no matter what demographic you are, no matter whether you're disabled or not, more people don't have their shit together than you've ever realized in your entire life. You will never figure it out. Most of the people you think when you were growing up that had it figured out do not. They never had it figured out. They're just really good at faking it.
I was just saying that on some other thing. I love that. I love that you said that too.
I think people need to realize that everybody's entitled to a bad day, a bad week, a bad month. Some of us have had bad years. Right?
I think when you're standing in front of me and pretending that the global pandemic that we've experienced is not really happening and it's not real yet, I have a friend who died. I have friends and close family members who still can't smell or taste things. I have, we've actually experienced it, and I'm so grateful that you haven't, but you need to shut up about your opinion. And so so dealing with that on a consistent basis on top of struggling to get on the bus in the morning and the list of things, and somebody says, be positive, Dave. That statement makes it 10 times worse.
No, it really does. And if you ask somebody a question to follow that statement up, it makes them have to think about it. How do I be positive? How?
Yeah.
When all this is going on, because people have been, I remember, again, we talked about different generations, right? So like my mom's generation was always told to put a smile on your face and the world becomes blah, 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 blah. Something Mary Poppins-ish.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
lot.
I can't
smile on your face and a song in your heart.
Yeah, something stupid like that, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was their way of basically saying, because remember, their generation, a lot of what we have now is passed on by those generations. So by the boomers, Gen X, and so forth and so on, right? Basically, what they were told was swallow what's really going on with you, right? Ignore really what's going on with you. We've all got it. We all don't want to, nobody wants to talk about it. So smile, swallow it, and shut up. That's basically what it meant, right? So our generation comes along and goes, I can't do that because I've seen what happens when you do that, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's numbers why they hate us.
Suicide rates increase, right? You end up with a lot more physical health problems as a result, right? You end up with a lot of other things that go on, and it's because all of their life, they were taught to smile, swallow it, and shut up, right? So our generation goes, I'm not trying to do that. And because realistically, we're the first generation that actually goes, hey, does somebody else besides me notice that elephant in the room? It's uncomfortable for a lot of them, right? Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much why everyone's answer is be positive. It's still trying to pass on that smile, swallow it, and shut up mentality. The problem is we go, but there's an elephant in the room, and if we don't deal with it, it will destroy the house. And that's not something that many people are comfortable with.
Jason is joining us to acknowledge our live chat. Hi, Jason.
I just wanted to let you know, Jay, you are teetering on too much volume.
Oh, sorry. Oops.
If somebody wants to look at the Instagram chat, maybe that's where I'm sending messages. But you have
I can't look at it.
No, I understand that. But you have a lot of people listening, and they really connected with a lot of this stuff. So you're doing great. I don't want to. They're talking about the same thing you are in the chat. So have fun with it.
Well,
Sorry, I just wanted to warn Jay because he's making a lot of good points, and I don't want him to go back in his recording and go, "Why didn't somebody tell me?" So
you turn it down.
there you go. All right, have a great day.
Yeah, this one's gonna get
I could
intense,
just,
so we might as
I
well
could
just
just,
adjust the gain or something.
and that's the sad thing because my gain is all the way down.
No,
I
gotcha.
could just imagine the chat just being like, "Oh, here's like, oh, great."
No,
Thanks.
And like you're
when
making
you s-
great points, and it's just like,
Yeah, when he said I was like, "Oh, Jay, if you go to your master volume, maybe you can turn down your."
There's a master volume on iPad.
I think so. Try turning your volume button
Oh,
on.
he's on iOS.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the iPad today,
Okay. Just
which
maybe-
proves that my point. We won't go
Here
into
we
that.
go.
We're not gonna have
I've
this.
never-
This is a
We're
whole
not
nother
doing this.
podcast.
We're not doing this.
I find that
Look,
having an Apple Watch attached to my wrist and an iPad in my bag
Represent.
and a MacBook in my bag and my iPhone in my pocket, I'm a much happier person.
that's what makes us positive. Apple devices. Not fun.
Goodness. Oh, that must
Um,
explain why I'm grumpy 99% of
That's
the
what it
time.
is.
Okay, got it.
I do think though there is something to being said about stay positive, have a good attitude, right? Like I don't want to discourage that entire mentality. Like I believe that there are people who that actually does benefit, right? And I think for all our sakes, I think that attitude would probably be more positive. But when we are experiencing like consistent levels of frustration and irritation for all sorts of things, whether it's I don't and here's where I'm going to go with this, and I think it's I don't know how every morning I'm supposed to get up, go wait outside for a bus regardless of the weather, whether it's 90 degrees out or it's, snowing like the world has become Alaska, right? Like it doesn't matter. I'm going to be standing out there in 2 feet snow or the rain, or it doesn't matter. And I'm going to do this every day for the rest of my life. And that thought process is ingrained in there, and there's nothing that can do to be changed about it. And I'm supposed to do that every single day. I think after doing it for about 20 years, I don't think I have to be a happy person. like you know what I
and that's
mean?
what they
Like
expect you to be on the bus stop, just singing a song, bopping along every single day. It's like, boy, you do this. Let's switch. I'll get in your car with the warm or the air conditioning or whatever you've got going on, and I'll turn on my favorite songs and I'll sing, and no one's gonna notice because I'm in the car. And you can wait your ass out here on this bus stop and then be told that the bus route decided they didn't want to come here today. So now you got to call your boss because you're late for work.
and it's
detours. Yeah.
it's not that that's the worst thing in the world. And you're right. The positive thing to do is to put my headphones in, listen to a great song, do everything I can do in my power to make that experience better. But the reality is that experience sucks.
Yeah.
And
sucks.
and here's the problem. And this is the reason I think it weighs on this community in particular. And this is a super mild example of what it is. The bus ride is minor in the grand scheme of things, but it illustrates my point properly, which is no matter what I do, that will always be my reality. Right? I could ask somebody for a ride and feel really guilty about that and feel like I'm taking advantage of that person, and that would create a whole nother list of emotional problems, right? Or I could suffer through this every single day. But though and that's and so doing that for long periods of time, you start to wake up in the morning and go, what am I even doing?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I even doing this? And those are the spiraling thoughts that lead to depression, suicide, anxiety, and the much worse outcomes and scenarios of those thoughts, right? But and it seems so minor, it's like, oh, so what? You had to ride the bus. No.
But
I have to ride the bus. I can never save up money and get a car. I can never. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I do. I will always do this.
Right.
if I
I will
can
always
add
be
to
on
that-
everybody else's fucking time.
Right.
Sorry, go Jay.
Yeah, absolutely. But one of the things that I'll add to that is what I think is missing for a lot of individuals is that the bus riding experience is very different for you and I as opposed to everyone else, right? So, for example, here in Philadelphia, there are bus routes which, for the life of me, I don't understand. We have two sets of buses here, right? It's one company, but two styles of buses. There's the regular size bus, and then there's the accordion bus. And the accordion bus is supposed to be for long routes, like the routes that span the entire city. But you get buses that are super short, that are supposed to only be for short routes, that are on some of the longest routes in Philadelphia. Like the 16 bus, for example, is one of the longest routes because it goes up and down Broad Street, but they use the shorter buses. Getting on that thing is like literally, if you are still concerned about standing next to people, you will never get on the 16 a day in your life because there is no comfort. Like you are literally like hugged up against somebody the entire route, right? So for a sighted person to be able to get on the bus, you can kind of see and navigate your way possibly around some people to be able to like avoid bumping into somebody. But
I get on that bus, I trip over somebody's feet almost every
time.
And here's the rub, right? This is where the bus hits the road, so to speak. is some days I go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, and that person goes, oh, it's cool, whatever. Sometimes they just give you a death glare. Sometimes they're a psychotic nut job.
Yeah.
And they go, what the fuck are you doing?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Or
and you have no control over that. And yet
hold on.
Every time you get on that bus.
Ezrick, what were you about to say?
I'll do you one better. I had a guy on the subway. It wasn't crowded or anything. I was just walking over from one side of the subway car to the other to get off the train because I was getting off the next stop. Accidentally stepped on this guy's sneakers. Before I can even utter the word sorry, this man slaps the back of my calf so hard, like the wrath of God in his hand. And I'm just like, bro. Like, I really wanted to spaz, but I was just like, you know what? It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Nah, fuck that guy. I hope he can't sleep at night. I hope he
Oh,
wakes
for
up in the
real,
middle of the night
definitely.
screaming every single night. Look, I can't see. I'm gonna get crazy.
That's the thing, right? So now let me add a whole new dimension of anxiety onto all of this.
All right.
Now imagine you're on the bus with two small children and you're responsible for their well-being.
Yup.
And you're dealing with nut jobs. And you're dealing with the wackos, the wackos of the world, the people who take who I call microwave gangsters, right? They've watched 3 videos, they've got 2 guns, and now they are the certified gangster. You're dealing with those of the world, right? And now it's your job to navigate safely, you and 2 small children, around these psychos and whack jobs. And you're not sure whether or not who's got what kind of intention, right? That can bring on anxiety beyond belief because it's not just you anymore. Now you're responsible for other lives, which, by the way, I don't know what said I was able to be a responsible adult, but here we are. So being responsible for other lives, right? That can be anxiety inducing, like, to the max. Like, that's why personally, I can't, as much as I would love to, I can't take my kids anywhere by myself. Like, just because of things like that, I can't take my kids anywhere by themselves because that becomes a nightmare unto itself.
Until they're older. Let's Jay, let's be positive and remember to stay positive.
Let's be positive. It doesn't matter that they're also women, which has a whole nother element of danger.
Yeah.
But no, let's be positive.
Yeah. And that's again, the smile, swallow it and shut up type of thing, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's.
I remember having this debate with my mother. I remember, in high school being a dumbass in a dumbass relationship that I should never have been in and wasted too much time in, but that's a whole nother scenario, right? But in this time in my stupid life, I decided I had to go to college because I needed to go to college. That's what you do. So I went to the community college. Now, to go to the community college, you have to take 3 buses to get through downtown and go through the ghetto. And you literally walk past a high security women's prison every single day, where I got catcalled by women. That's a real story. That really happened. Um, but
Humble brag.
that all be yeah, that's definitely a brag. I'm so glad that the women who were locked up are screaming out of the windows.
Hey, listen, it's some confidence boost. Come on, don't lie.
All right, no, but see, that's
I'm
that's
lying.
just-
I'm kidding.
this is this is the stay positive attitude, and this is the way you should look at it, which is exactly like that. It's funny, it's fun. It should be a confidence booster, even though it's really not. Right? That's how you should look at it. Right? And the reality is, it's kind of scary. Right? It's kind of a scary reality. And I remember my mom saying, you know, like, don't you want to go to a different school? And you're like, okay, but I didn't get in anywhere else, you know? And she's like, well, you know, get your grades up and go to the other campus, do these things. I'm like, see, here's the thing, Mom. The classes I want to take are only at this campus. So the reality is, to take the classes I want to take at the degree I want, to do all those things, this is my option. This is the road I'm on. And you're telling me that every single day I'm going to be in danger downtown. That's great. On the campus, it's perfectly safe.
Yep.
In the direct train stations, it's usually pretty safe. There's enough security and whatever. But that in between track between that main train station and the college is really rough. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to deny that. But the reality is, I had to fight through that battle no matter what. It didn't matter. But you can tell me it's unsafe all day. It doesn't matter. But I did it, and I got through it. And that's fine. But that constant voice of, not only is it not really safe, it's not. Let's not lie. It's also being told over and over and over to me that I'm not safe doing it because of my disability. Like, I don't know what the hell you're supposed to do in that scenario. I'd love to know. I think as the realities of adulthood, like as I became aware of reality, hit puberty, became an adult, right? Those kinds of things. Like, I went from being a pretty positive kid who was all about having fun and always smiling and literally couldn't stop smiling to, God, I hate the world and all of this sucks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
and to be fair, I've gotten my anxiety and depression under a little bit of control, right? I've balanced it without therapy because it's not insured, and without any medication because it's not insured, and without any doctors because they're not insuring me for anything. But
And that
But-
I know that
that's
song.
that's the other scary thing, right? So if you look at the stats of how many of us actually experience like depression, and because they talked about, we experience depression, anxiety, social phobias, and agoraphobia, which for those that don't know is a fear of going outdoors. And if you don't understand where the fear of outdoors comes from, those last few stories that we've been telling should give you a good glimpse on many reasons why going outside for a lot of us is kind of like, no thanks. But like, to experience all of that and not be able to get the proper health care you need to even be able to address those issues, right? Like, what options are we really left with if you can't actually go to get mental health help? What options are you actually left with? Like, we talk about all the time, like, some things for that we need physically aren't covered by insurance, right? Like OrCams and certain pieces of technology, because certain institutions won't cover that stuff. But think about the mental stuff that's not covered. Think about the stuff that's just like, you know, their only advice is to smile and swallow it, because otherwise insurance won't cover it and you're screwed anyway. Like,
I mean,
what options are we left with there?
I hate the be positive, keep a smile on your face advice, but it's literally the best advice we got because it's almost the only option we have. And like, that's really shitty. Dave,
Can I
thanks.
interject with that?
You
'Cause
can.
I do have some things about that.
Okay.
So this kind of ties into it. There was a divide for a little bit in the blind talk community about people who were born blind and, did I say blind? I can talk. People who were born blind and people who are steadily losing their vision. And I guess there was like a who has it worse battle or something like that, which I was not necessarily privy to, and I certainly wasn't a part of. But if I don't know if that's still going on, but I did want to say that as somebody who was born with low vision, I can't imagine what it's like to wake up every day and have less sight, or even in someone else's case, wake up with no sight or poor sight. And then, even if it doesn't steadily decline, you still lived a perfectly sighted life before. And now you have to like relearn how to navigate the world. So, even though I don't know what it's like to be you, I can understand. And I'm never going to look in someone's face and say, okay, but I had it worse because I was blind longer. Like, I just feel like,
Yeah, what kind of fucking argument is that?
right.
It was a
And
stupid
with
one.
that, there are cultures, I'm not sure which ones because I'm poorly educated, but there are cultures where like if someone dies or something happens, you take at least 7 days or at least a month to mourn. Like they make you mourn. Like you can't distract yourself, you can't go out and do shit. Like you need to sit in it and feel it. And I do think that there is some good to that because a lot of us don't deal with our shit at all. And then later in life, like we're fucked up, like we're alcoholics and we've got all these crazy issues. And, you know, will you come over? I need the pain to go away. Like we just don't know how to deal with our shit. So I think that smile, you know, and try to stay positive works to an extent. But also, if we could stop playing a game of who has it worse and just help each other mourn, you know, like.
If I could jump in
Jimmy.
on that one. So I remember that it started out as a genuine conversation, and then for some reason, all the wrong people jumped in, and it became an argument, right? But as somebody with RP, that's literally been my story. You start out with pretty okay, and then you slowly start to lose it. I think I talked about. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I talked about it at one point.
I think you and I had a discussion about it, like briefly in the beginning when I was talking about my eye condition because they're sisters.
Yeah. So like you start those days where you wake up, I always called it like the worst like phone update ever. Like instead of getting new features, just current features just keep getting taken away over and over again. So like my brother and I, because my brother and I both have the same condition. And when we go through that, like we legit, like whenever I go through it, he's my first call because I know he understands what's going on. And things like be positive and things like, you know, stay strong and things like you've got this. On any other day, I can just kind of eat that up, whether I agree with it or not. I could just eat it up. On those days, I don't want to hear none of that at all.
It doesn't help you. It doesn't help on the bad days.
It does not help on the absolute worst days. Like I will literally just lay in my room and just stare at like a wall, like no TV, no phone, no nothing. Because on those days, you are literally mourning what you used to be able to do, right? So like I remember at one point, I couldn't play catch with like a regular ball, but we used to have this giant, me and my brother used to have this giant deflated ball, right? Something that you would buy from like Five and Below or Family Dollar or something like that. And all the air was slowly going out. And it was deflated enough that it like flew in the air slow enough for my brother and I to be able to see it. So that was our version of being able to play football out back. And I remember the day where I could no longer do it, where like he would throw it in the air and it was just gone until it like hit me in the face, right? And it was one of the saddest moments because that was one of our moments together, because a lot of the stuff that everyone else used to be able to do or could do, we couldn't do. And that was still one of our things. And to lose that thing was like extremely painful, right? And then you go through that as an adult where it's just like, okay, now this thing is taken away from you. Now that thing is taken away from you. And now you can't do this. That is a form of trauma. That is a form of trauma. And I don't think many people realize that how traumatic that can be. But that is a form of trauma that is never going to be like, cheer up, or well, consider all these other great things you have going on in your life. That day, I don't care.
Yeah, it's not gonna solve it.
Right.
When you're in mourning. Now, I listen to a podcast. It's called The Morning Stream. It's one of my favorite podcasts ever. It's Scott and Brian talking every morning. They do a show, but they have a therapist come on every Thursday. Her name is Wendy, and she came on early into the pandemic talking about how when we get all locked down and everything is shut down, everything was lost. What's happening to society as a whole right now is that everybody is mourning something as if it had died. We had all lost something, whether it was our favorite restaurants, whether it was our, our activities with our friends, our families, whatever that is. Every person is mourning something right now. And that's why a lot of the people at that point were on edge. And what I found interesting about that segment at the time was not only I didn't ever equivalent. I can speak. I'm a podcaster.
I swear to God.
But I never took the term of mourning and the 5 stages of grief and all those things. I never equated. Got it. To
There it is. See, we find it eventually.
I never equated that to living things, right? Like we all think we have funerals. We have we mourn the loss of loved ones when that happens, even animals, pet, all that. We all take that normally, but we don't ever treat the other things in our lives that we lose the same way, right? It's as minimal as it can be. And so every time that something is taken away from those of us who are disabled in any way or in declining vision issues or declining in any form of disability, we're losing things constantly, right?
Yeah.
All the time. Or even just missing out on things because we can't do them, right? Not even so much as, and this is why the argument, this is not only the argument of people like Jay here who are declining in vision, right? I'm lucky to have been stable for years. No one will ever give me a straight answer. That's going to stay that way because they don't know. And I'm thankful to have what I have. But when I can't do something, I have to grieve and go through that process of something that I can't do because I'm mourning it. I've lost it.
Think of just a quick piggyback on that, because I never thought about this in that way. Think about how many rites of passage that that able-bodied individuals get that you don't, right? The driving of the car for the first time, right? Being able to drive. That's something everyone around 16, 17, 18 years old gets to do.
Or at least the media portrays it that way. I'm sorry. I just want
to
What kind of car am I going to have,
Yeah, right. And you're going, well, I'm going to have a 2010 public transportation bus. Like that's my vehicle.
I'm sorry. What? A 2010? You don't mean a 1976 RTA bus?
Right.
Well, I mean, look, depending on the city, you might get an updated model. But so like you're already set. So like the joys and anticipations of things like driver's ed, the joy and anticipation of being able to drive to prom in some fancy car, like that's not yours, right? When people get to go clubbing at night, like I to this day, first off, I've never understood the concept of clubs because it's just entirely too loud. Like the first thing, like everything that I just don't like all at one time, extreme noise, extreme like random disco lights, and just people just yelling their behind off all at once. It's just been a turn off to me in general. But the fact that like people can go out and enjoy a nightlife, and for you're playing Survivor when you go outside and and go out at night, like that's something you don't get to do, right? There's a lot of things that we don't get to do, and that's kind of like mourning that rite of passage is something I've never really thought about.
But we don't do, and that's it. We don't do anything for that, right? So when Dave turned 16 and he went to go find out if he could drive legally, which I, at the time, they told me I could with those giant binoculars that like,
oh yeah.
And then I came back like 2 years later and they're like, did you ever do that? I'm like, no. They're like, oh, thank fucking God.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, no, I never did that. They're like, okay, good, because we're about to tell you that you can no longer do that.
God, right.
But when I turned 16, right, I had a 16-year-old birthday, right? But there wasn't like that big car moment, right? And this is, look, what I'm hoping is when people are listening to this, they're realizing these are minor examples, and their examples and
Yeah.
their realities may be way larger, but we're trying to give you a perspective, right? And if your problem is larger than this, I hope that you realize we're just trying to help here, we're not comparing
You
them.
can't
But
give every single example in 1
right.
hour.
Right.
But as there was no funeral for the lack of Dave's car, is basically what we're saying here, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There
It's
was
not even just the car, it's the concept of independence. You know, the whole
Right.
like, oh, he can't even drive. I need a man to pick me up or whatever
Oh,
the fuck.
God.
You know,
Oh.
Which-
like makes
oh,
you feel
God.
lesser because you can't do that.
Yep.
Hey,
Well, right,
why don't you
and-
take a ride on this cane right here? Talking about
Oh,
you-
And
yeah,
so-
that might, depending on how that's interpreted, you might end up with like 10 to 15. So you might want to be careful with that phrasing.
yeah.
I know what I said.
But my but the point being, like, all right, so we moved on from that point, right? And then I turned 19, and I was, let's be honest, desperate, absolutely desperate for some form of independence, right? And so I moved out,
Yeah.
right? I moved in with my really shitty girlfriend. I can say that. She'll never hear this, I hope. If you do, you're psycho and stay away from me. But if, like, in that reality, I was so determined to have some form of independence that at 19, when I could have stayed at home, saved all my money, started working a normal job and saved a ton of money and lived with my parents and been perfectly fine, right? And probably gotten a lot more accomplished in those years, right? I was so desperate for that independence that I went out and did that and wasted years paying way too much in rent, living in shitty apartments, going to shitty neighborhoods, working a really shitty job, doing really stupid shit. And, like, I'm not saying that that's entirely that fault of that thing, but, like, there was nothing I didn't mourn or appreciate or take the time to grieve any of the things that I had lost out on becoming in that transition from childhood to adulthood. Instead, I basically demanded it.
Hmm.
And that was a mistake. And I tell every 19-year-old and 20-year-old that I interact with, which is sadly a ton of them, to not make this mistake.
Bad
'Cause
for
it's
all the
not-
19 and 20-year-olds that you interact with. You just said sadly, and they're probably all like, wow. Wow.
But
No,
you actually just made me think about something.
Trust me,
How many-
if I'm telling you this, you're one of the ones I like.
How
Go ahead.
many bad decisions have we made to find a version of independence?
Fucking.
Yep. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
How many bad decisions? Because everybody, when the rest of the world that's your peers at that age is getting independence and you feel like you're on punishment, how many times has somebody gotten an apartment they couldn't afford? How many times has someone done something as far as took a job, right, that you knew full well you couldn't do, but you just knew that was going to be your version of independence, right? So I think that there does need to be something, because it's almost like there's a fork in the, you're almost like every other kid until 16. And then all of a sudden the fork in the road happens.
Right.
And I think because there's nothing on our side of the fork, there needs to be something put in place so that for future generations, like we're already past that mark, but like for future, well, not all marks though, but for future generations, there needs to be something there.
No, that's exactly it.
I
But-
agree. Because I dreaded being 16. I was like, I know for a fact that when we all turn 16, it's going to be very noticeable that I'm not like the rest of them. And I hated it. I did not want to be 16.
When I turned 25, I remember making jokes about my quarter life crisis. Right? That was a running joke of mine. But like, if you really look at it, acknowledging where I was at that point, evaluating that scenario, doing those things was actually probably more emotionally healthy, right? To realize that transition from I demanded independence to be an adult, screwed it all up, fell apart, and now I'm picking up the pieces and realizing what that really meant, right? And fighting the actual battle was
Yeah.
probably a really good thing. But what I didn't do back then was realize I don't get to take the same route as everyone else. And despite the fact that we grew up knowing that and doing that repeatedly over and over and over our entire childhoods is taking different routes to do these same things, those routes do not exist for adults in this scenario. Don't tell me that the Social Security Administration supports you fully. Don't tell me that. It's bullshit. It's not a ride. It's not an it's not an out. It's nothing.
Sorry.
We've gone over that. We don't need to go there again, right?
Right.
But don't tell me that being stuck in the same town basically for the rest of eternity is like a blessing, right? Like at some point, and I know this because I realized and I had to grieve, the reality is that I can't just get up and move to the nicer part of town, even if I could afford it. Right? Because the reality is I'll be trapped there. I can't get around over there. It doesn't matter.
Oh, the no bus areas.
Right. The no bus areas. Right. So like I could have moved there. So when I bought this house and had to do that, that was stressful and emotional in all sorts of ways. But I also had to grieve and realize, and I'm probably still going through it, to be completely honest, that this is my reality. This is the path I have. And that's tough. Right? That's hard to accept. And I think that is constantly being battled, is this is what I have and this is what I have to work with.
So I just wanted to go back to Jay was talking about trauma and how, you know, going through vision loss is definitely something like that. I just remember back in like May, I started seeing my physician again, right? And I go to him and he's asking me, he's like, do you have any like trauma in your life? I was like, bro, I'm legally blind. Walking down the street is traumatic. But then he was like, no, but seriously, do you have like a real like traumatic event in your life? I was like, well, I guess the most traumatic is when I lost my right eye to the Nerf gun. And if you look at that, that's one major, traumatic moment is losing the vision, and more, back to the mourning thing, is mourning that loss of that happening. Then it's also within that mourning is, the blaming, who do I have to blame for this? Is it me? Is it everybody else? Why did this happen to me? Woe is me. Then it's, the whole, I got to fight through this. Exactly.
But here's the thing, and this, Ezrick, I don't want to intrude on this, right? But I want to give this example, is right when you lost vision due to a Nerf gun incident, there was no funeral for the loss of vision that you had. No one went out into the backyard, lit the fire pit, threw the Nerf gun in, and we all like chanted and sang Kumbaya to the loss of your vision. Yet the reality is, I think that may have helped through that emotional process. I know it seems stupid.
Here's the thing though, right? We could bury the Nerf gun and then make a tombstone that says there was Nerf and then there was nothing. I'm sorry, you know what?
You know what?
On that note, I'm leaving. It's been fun,
Ezra quits the
guys.
show.
Ezrick, I love you. I'm sorry.
But like that's the thing though, is not that it's a perfect example, but that was never done. There was no funeral. And yet, like, I think if we handled those kinds of scenarios and those forms of loss better, I think we'd all be a little bit more emotionally stable.
Yeah.
On top of that, there was no, okay, now that this happened, this is how you're going to have to deal with life. There was nobody telling you, oh, this has happened to me. This is how you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're
basically just cut loose.
Yep.
Exactly. You're just like, all right, well, this happened. Deal with it. I don't know how you're meant to deal with it, but figure it the hell out.
I remember distinctly when I started going to the Sight Center as an adult, the Cleveland Sight Center. They're supposed to help people like us. Secrets. they don't help people like me because I'm not blind enough. But that's a whole nother problem.
Okay.
I know.
That's an
I
episode.
know. That's a whole nother problem.
That's a whole episode. Yeah.
But I remember distinctly with the 15th, or let's be honest, I'm not going to exaggerate. The 4th counselor they had given me, who met with me to discuss things, I remember him using those words as like, you need to be more positive. I don't think you talk about your disability appropriately. And I remember distinctly responding to that in, I can talk about my disability in whatever fucking way I want to. And I stand by that to this day.
Ooh.
That doesn't mean I'm perfectly emotionally stable. I'm not going to pretend like I am, because I'm not. But like, don't tell me how to feel.
So I, as somebody that's in school for counseling and for therapy, I get what he was trying to do. He was trying to reframe it to make it look in a positive light, but there's also something called cultural competence, where you need to understand the population and the worldview that they see. And if anybody who will ever see this as a therapist or aspiring therapist or somebody that's in the profession, be positive are probably 2 of the worst words you can say to someone who's going through sight loss or visual impairment, because again, if you missed the whole rest of this podcast,
if you know,
there's just first, thanks for joining in, but secondly, like those are in a therapeutic session, that's the easiest way to lose confidence or rapport with your client. That is the fastest way, because it almost, be positive can sometimes sound like, so what?
Right.
It's almost like, and to be fair, to be fair, this guy had tons of experience with visually impaired. This was his job, right? And just
because it's your job doesn't mean you're good at it.
Ain't that the fucking truth?
And I can tell you right now, when it comes to therapists, just because it's your job, you could have been doing this thing 20 years.
He's not a therapist. He's a sight vision guidance counselor through. I don't know. I don't even know what his entire role was, and because of that conversation, I never worked with that guy ever again. Also, they rotate those people, it seems like every 2 weeks. Which made them basically useless.
That's mainly because of probably neighborhood you were in, but that's a
I'm sure. I'm 100% sure. It's the resources for that place aren't great. If I were completely blind and wanted to play beeper ball, I'm sure I could play it there, right? that would be great. But that's not what that place is. And so I hope that people who are listening to this show got something out of it.
Could I just say, as a comic relief thing, and also after this, I'm going to try to make it short-winded because I know we're definitely running low on time and I got to get to work. But piggybacking on what you said about don't tell me how to fucking talk about my disability. So I don't know if all of you saw my differently abled stitch that went a lot more, I'm not going to say viral, but it caught on a lot more than I thought it would. And one thing that made me laugh is when I got the call from Jay to be one of the hosts on the show, I was like, oh my God, like this is so cool. I've made it. Like I'm famous, bitches. So the first thing I did was call my mom. And I was like, Mom, guess what I did? Remember that podcast that I guested on that one time? This woman, this woman, no disrespect. She says, oh, what was it called? The podcast for the differently abled? When I tell you that I took my phone from my ear and I just stared at that little red button for a good 15 seconds. The woman who gave me life, I was like, do I do it, ladies and gentlemen? And I just calmly put the phone and said, no, that is not what it is called. So I don't. And she was like, well, I'm going to listen to it. And I was like, okay, but I'm going to make fun of you I'm going to make a point to bring up this conversation and roast you because of what you have just done. Now, she didn't see my TikTok because she doesn't like my TikToks, which is fair. But it was worst timing, Mom. Worst timing ever.
Hey, so
Hi, Cosmo.
Oh, Kai, before you leave, there was a question in the chat, and I don't know quite how to ask it other than to just ask it. But
okay,
Have any of you, and I'm going to start with you, have any of you taken your vision for granted?
I was born with low vision, but I guess I do take the I definitely okay, yes, I definitely do take the vision that I have for granted, obviously not purposefully so, but there was a time when I was in a chat with a bunch of other visually impaired people and I had sent a picture and nobody could tell what the picture was. And to me, because I have one somewhat decent eye, it was clear as day if I looked at it like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then, people talk about voiceover, which I personally don't use. And it did kind of add that extra layer of perspective of like, my vision isn't as good as Joe Schmo sitting next to me, but it's certainly not as bad as other people's. And not to be that gross person who compares themselves to other people to make them feel better. It didn't make me feel better, it made me feel worse because I was like, I can't imagine what it's like to try to navigate the world with even worse vision. And it kind of gave me
I
like a
I was going to bring this up is that this community, finding this community on TikTok, my vision impairment isn't something that I've openly spoke about. I've been on podcasts for over a
right,
decade. This isn't something I normally talk about. I usually pretend like it's a thing, but it's not a thing that I acknowledge a lot.
right,
And because I'm able to function to a reasonable amount
right,
with the vision I do have, but I will never take it for granted. I know there's always people who are worse off, or there's people who can see better than me, and I can be angry in either way. I can be angry that the world gave people shittier vision than me, which is fucked up, and I can still be angry about that. Or I can be really angry that I don't have better vision like everybody else. But
right.
that doesn't solve the problem.
Anything.
I
That
guess I should
doesn't.
have defined taking for granted because maybe I'm not thinking what
I
I'm
mean,
thinking I'm thinking.
but I have never taken this for granted. I'm happy to have what I have, but I wish that there was more I could do knowing this, I guess.
Well said.
Okay, I haven't. I think Jay can agree with me on this a little bit. As somebody who goes through, bouts of vision loss, I think without wanting to, I do it. I take it for granted. Like before my accident, it was so easy for me to go home month and a half without realizing I could see out of that eye. Like that's how much I took the little bit of vision that I had for granted. And then it's like now 3 years ago I could play Grand Theft Auto 4 and not have an issue with anything. Like I could go through the missions and the only issue I would have is like, all right, I get into a dark space, I need to turn up the brightness on my TV and in the game. Now it's damn, all these reflective, backgrounds, I can't do crap. This is nope, it's not for me now. So I feel like unintentionally we take it for granted. I don't know, Jay, your take?
I feel like as a child, yeah, when before vision loss became really noticeable, yeah, because again, in elementary school, I had kids that were like me. So in middle school and high school, well, in high school, no, I didn't. But as an adult, no, especially when you start to realize you could lose vision at any moment, right? Like I'm grateful for the vision that I have left because at least I can participate somewhat visually with my kids. And I realized that any given day I could wake up and that could be a wrap, right?
Yep.
So I'm grateful for what I still have left. So I don't feel like I do currently because I realize, especially having gone through bouts of severe vision loss, that any day I could lose it all. No. Mm-mm.
I think it also goes back to, I think I've made a video on this, and I think a few other people in Blind Talk have, where it's like when when you have faced the music of like, all right, well, I guess I'm doomed to, not doomed, but like it's gonna happen at some point. I don't know when, but it's gonna happen. Like, for me with this eye surgery that I got, my mom was asking me like, has it helped a little bit? I was like, honestly, it has its moments where it has and it has. I'm not gonna lie. She's like, oh, well, that doesn't sound good. I'm like, well, listen, the main thing is I bought myself a little bit of extra time with the vision that I have. Like that means a lot to me. I'm not saying, it really matters too much, because at the end of the day, I have to face the music that one day I'm gonna wake up and it's just gonna be either all gone or just even harder than it was before. And it's pray. It's pray for the best, but prepare for the worst.
On that note, I think this is a much deeper conversation than when we're running out of time. I know that a lot of us are on a sensitive time crunch at the moment. So thank you so much for listening to Inspirations Beyond Disabilities. I'm Dave Moore. As I've said, I'm a bald, dad bod version of Ed Sheeran. Kai is on TikTok as Kai is Fly. Her TikTok is hilarious. And
Thanks.
significantly large amounts of people should be following her, and they don't. So I don't know what that's about. But you should go follow Kai is Fly. You should follow Blind and NY. That's Ezrick. He also
Hey.
hung out with us and discussed things. How you doing? You doing all right, Ezrick?
Yeah,
Terrible.
got to prepare for today.
I do want to thank everybody on this panel for being open and emotional and honest. I think as much as this show is important and challenge, this episode in particular was a challenging one to get through. And I think if you're out there struggling, I hope this helped instead of made it worse. And we're here to help. We're here to lesson and chat with you. And Jay, as wonderful as he is, the baritone blurred on TikTok, is here to provide some information for you as we close out today's episode.
Absolutely. So if you are an individual that is experiencing trauma of any sort, if you're an individual that's experiencing depression, anxiety, if you're going through any type of mental health crisis whatsoever, and you do not know where to turn, there are several resources that I can provide for you right now that will be beneficial for you. You do not have to wait. You do not have to ponder on it. I would advise take advantage of it as soon as you can. There is the National Crisis Text Line, which will allow you to contact them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And any crisis that you are currently experiencing, you will get someone on the line who is trained and prepared to help you. You can text HOME, HOME, to 741-741, and an individual will get back to you immediately. I volunteered for them for a little bit. They are a good service. You can also reach out if you are experiencing what is called suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts. You can reach out to the National Suicide Hotline at 1-800-273 3855. Let me just double check that number one more time. Again, it is the National Suicide Hotline, and that is 1-800-273-3855. Seek help if you need it. It is there for you. Please take advantage of it. We experience a lot in the blind and the disabled community. We don't have to experience it alone.
And even if you're not in this community and you are perfectly able, those resources are there for everyone. Keep that in mind. We all experience trauma in all sorts of ways, visually impaired or not, disabled or not. These are challenges for everyone. Thank you so much for listening.
Let me correct that. It's 1-800-273-8255. Again, being visually impaired, you read numbers wrong. So it's 1-800-273-8255.
Don't call that other number. Thank you so much for listening to Inspirations Beyond Disabilities. I hope you enjoyed today's program as part of Public Access America. We're live every Friday at noon on the Public Access America YouTube channel, as well as Mondays as a podcast for your listening pleasure. And we'll see you guys next time.
Yeehaw.
I love it. Hey, I have a quick announcement, Dave. Just Jay, I told Jay yesterday, and it's in the chat too. We have a new YouTube channel. Inspirations Beyond Disabilities has their very own YouTube channel, and I believe next week we will be streaming from that.
Oh, well, see, you told me it existed. You didn't tell me we were launching it today.
Well, we're not launching it. This is a secret soft opening. We need
we
100
love a soft opening.
We need 100 subscribers to make a custom URL. So I'm trying to be like, hey guys, go over there, subscribe.
Oh, got it. Okay.
But we're so big, we don't need to be a Public Access America offshoot. We're our own thing now.
I'm just trying to, stay in current branding. We also need to talk about these ads. I'm not trying to be a jerk. If we're still live, that's fine.
No, yeah, we are. Holy shit.
Holy shit.
Are we still on YouTube
I
right
was
now?
saying that we have
But-
a YouTube channel.
But our
'Cause we're still live.
the ads we put up, the ads that were edited, I'm
Mm.
not trying to complain. I'm not trying to be a jerk, and don't let anybody get emotionally offended by this. I
I'm
know
already crying.
we're all emotionally on edge right now. You had nothing to do with it, Kai.
Uh-oh.
I'm scared.
Is
Me
is
too.
is the text and borders and things that are on the outsides of these ads, from a graphic designer standpoint, somebody who went to school for media arts,
Oh.
they're how do I say this nicely? They're bad. We need to get some like consistent logos and colors that are, especially for our audience, are visually friendly and easy to see for those who have limited vision. I think like spinning words are impossible for me to read, meaning they're way more impossible for people who are more blind than me to read. And that's not our target demographic. It's not people who can see perfectly. Our demographic is definitely not.
So you're saying we're not aiming to taunt the audience? That's not what we're trying to do.
No.
Right?
What?
What?
I'm
gonna call an Ezrick on this and say, man, I was really fucking high when I made that. You know what I mean?
Wow.
and it was one of 3 videos, and I was just having fun with it. You know
no,
what I mean?
and I'm not trying to criticize you in any way.
But you totally did, Dave. And now I'm so mad. I'm so pissed off right now, Dave.
You just offended so many people. How dare you?
No, you see how Ezrick's phone is turned sideways? It leaves less of that black room so that we don't need that stuff in what we're making. So yeah.
Well, and like the vertical ad is great. The vertical ad is perfect.
Yeah, it is.
Which is why what I posted is that on my platforms.
I love
But that's I made the vertical one mainly because the majority of places that we usually post it is TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see how the sideways ones come out on TikTok,
Exactly. Yep.
Right.
like if it like I realized the vertical bars leave problems on YouTube, but the you get those bars basically horizontally on TikTok. So
right.
I'm trying to I guess it's just a matter of just cutting 2 different versions, like a 16:9 and a 9:16.
Yeah, but when we have the extra 16:9 space, we need to use that effectively.
Yes, agreed. I hate that extra space. I never know what to do with it.
I don't know what any of this means. I'm just happy to be here.
Right?
Kai, if you have to go to work, I understand if you have to just like.
Can I just say that this is the darkest first episode I could have.
I'm sorry.
I
almost put a message in this morning. It's like, hey guys, I'm hosting today. I hope everybody's prepared for a really hard episode. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be emotional. This is Jay's fault. And I'll see you guys at noon.
I said we could have did something else.
Y'all took the yeehaw from my soul and just
I didn't think like when we were talking about this, because I was prepared for it to be you, me, Jason, and Ezrick. And I'm like, I never thought like, oh God, we're about to introduce a new host. And now she has to get introduced on the special episode.
Right.
Right.
I never thought about that.
But I knew it was going to be one of those on this very special episode of Inspirations Beyond Disabilities. Like
That's exactly how I'm editing it too.
I knew that yesterday, like for sure, when we had locked everything in and like, oh God, I hope everybody's ready.
Just wait until you read the live chat that happened. It was right alongside you all, and then it was going in places that you weren't. You know what I mean? Like that conversation.
Wait, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I was like sharing some of the screenshots with Kai, and
Thank you, by the way.
Jasmine was saying that we really kind of saved her from her depressive boredom, and she really appreciates us.
Oh, is Jasmine still there? Are we still live? We're still live.
Oh yeah,
Jasmine, thank you for reaching out to me on
Oh, correct.
How many times are we gonna realize that we're still live while we're live?
That was a blind moment, folks.
Thank you for Jasmine specifically for reaching out to me on Instagram and going and watching the Snack Network and all my goofy ass shit. I appreciate you a lot, Jasmine.
And Sophia was involved, so thank her. There was I'm trying to scroll through. There's under the screen. He's been a big influence in the chat, so I wanted to say thank you. And Blind Kitchen Lady stopped in, and Shy stopped in.
Oh,
Hey, how's the packing going?
Yeah, how's the packing going? We'll find out next week on another episode of Inspiration
right. She's
Beyond
on next week.
Disability.
Yep.
So everybody, I'm not gonna be here next week.
Yeah, I'm off next week too. I think the rotation is what? Shy, Brittany,
shoot, what is it?
Jason, and Ezrick, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Why do I gotta be the repeating one? Okay, I'll do it.
Because you missed.
You don't talk.
And you don't talk,
okay,
and you
fair
missed missed last week or the week before.
Okay,
So
fair enough.
That's why.
Fair.
Just for my mom's sake, that concludes this episode of